Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to people who are joining in from around the world. Welcome to another exciting live stream from MongoDB. In this session today, we are having some amazing guests from the PHP engineering team and also a product manager for PHP, where we'll be having some great in-dive discussions about PHP and what is the latest which is coming in from the PHP drivers for MongoDB. So let me know in the chat where you're joining in from, and we'll wait for people to join in. Okay. My name is Asavari, and I am a developer advocate here at MongoDB. And I focus on all things PHP, starting from content to community engagement and other things. And I'm excited to have our guest here today for the today's session. We have Andre Brown and Jerome from the PHP engineering team. And we also have Rishabh, the product manager for PHP here at MongoDB. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you here for Ask Me Anything live stream. So, people who are joining in on the chat, how have you used PHP with MongoDB before? Where do you think it is giving you an extra edge, or where do you think you are facing some challenges? This is the right time to ask all your PHP questions here. We have some great engineers over here to answer your questions. So, okay. So we have Andre and Jerome from the PHP engineering team and Rishabh. So can we have a quick round of introduction from you to talk about what you do? How does your day look like in your job?
Sure. My name is Andreas. I've been at MongoDB for 5.5 years now, but I've been using MongoDB for basically the last 12 years at this point, I think. I joined the PHP team as an engineer, then took over leading the PHP team, and over time, I'm now also leading the Ruby and Go team, which unfortunately means that my day consists of a bunch of meetings, a lot of manager work, and not as much coding as I used to. But fortunately, that's what we've got our team of engineers for.
Jerome, do you want to talk about your day?
Yes, thank you, Andreas. I'm Jérôme Tamarel. I joined the MongoDB PHP team 2 years ago, and I'm mainly focusing on the framework integration, and including Laravel and Doctrine Symfony integration, but also the library. And I'm learning contributing as a PHP extension, because the MongoDB driver for PHP has two parts. One is a library, PHP library, and the other is an extension. And I'm working with PHP for about 15 years, and I'm also part of the Symfony core team. So my daily job is about open source contribution most of the time, and more than contributing to own project, I'm also contributing to other projects to ensure MongoDB is correctly integrating in the PHP ecosystem.
Cool. Hi everyone. My name is Rishabh. I'm a product manager here at MongoDB. Been here roughly 3 years now, and I look after developer experience for PHP. That includes our drivers and framework integrations. I also look after our C and C++ language community, apart from PHP. My day, as any other PM, is mostly meetings and driving product sense forward and making sure we are executing on the right path and delivering value to our customers, especially our PHP developers who are using our client libraries with MongoDB.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am assuming from all your conversations, your day is mostly coding and meeting. Okay, moving ahead. I have some questions that are lined up. We have some questions from our promo videos that have gone, and from the promotions that we have done on LinkedIn and YouTube. So we'll be taking up those questions to have in front of you, and then you can choose to answer them, those questions, based on how you want to answer them. And from then we can take up the questions in the chat if we have any. So, okay, let's get started. So my first question to you is, we seem to have multiple libraries and integrations for MongoDB, for PHP specifically. So Rishabh, can you walk us through them on a very, very high level?
Sure. So yeah, we have multiple client libraries that we provide for our users, depending upon what they're using with. So we have MongoDB PHP Extension, which basically provides low-level APIs, and it is actually built on top of, fun fact, it is actually built on top of C driver. We provide a high-level API called PHP Library. It is very consistent with other language drivers that we offer. And then on top of PHP library, there are integrations with different frameworks which are built, like our official Laravel package, Doctrine ODM, which is basically an integration with Symfony, and some other tooling like the Fly system provider that we do.
Okay, interesting. That is interesting. And Jerome and Andre, you talked about your day as full of meetings and contributions. So what is your perspective on the engineering culture? What does the engineering culture look like to you?
So I think I should clarify a little bit. My day is full of meetings in the afternoon. The morning is actually very easy because I'm based in Europe and a lot of our company is based in the US, which for us is great because it means we have uninterrupted working hours. And more importantly, CI systems are completely empty. Nobody's working on them, so we get fast build results. Still always a big advantage. The engineering culture, I would say, is very self-driven. We have a lot of freedom as to what we would like to tackle. Obviously, we will discuss things among the team with Rishabh, but there's a lot of room to bring in your own ideas. And from there, it's, in my opinion, at least, a healthy mix of working by yourself and being able to get stuff done and collaborating with your coworkers through code reviews, pair programming sessions, that kind of stuff. Jerome, anything where you would want to correct me on?
That's your days. My days are also a lot of, I mean, there is a big part of a project we have, like, I think we are going to talk about what we have done and what we are going to release. But there is major project and also a lot of tiny bugs, little features that come from people opening issue or just discussing on Twitter, on Slack, on whatever. And so we try to get this, to grab this information, that what need to be done, what need to be improved, what need to be fixed. And part of the work is also to make all these small improvement daily to get the best experience for developer. Because at MongoDB, the goal is to build the best database, but also to have the best developer experience. And the department we work in is called the database experience. It's not the driver team. It's really in terms of making developer like working with MongoDB. So that's something we try to do.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems interesting, and your contributions are highly appreciated. Andre, you said you have used MongoDB for a very, very long time. I guess you said 12 years now. So how has your experience been building the PHP driver with MongoDB? And are there any latest updates that are coming in? Is there a latest release that is coming in?
Yeah, so I actually started using the PHP driver at the very beginning and started maintaining the Doctrine ODM. And that's how I got to know Jeremy Mikola, who was working on the driver at the time and still is. I see he's also hanging out in the chat, so hi, Jeremy. And when the new MongoDB driver came out, so we had what was called a legacy driver with a very simple API, and then the drivers API was unified among all of the languages, and there was this new driver coming out. And for the Doctrine ODM, I would have had to rewrite the entire backend stack. And so that's kind of been my start to working on MongoDB drivers, was rebuilding the legacy driver on top of the new driver. And that's how I was able to collect a lot of experience that then helped me get started when I joined MongoDB. Since then, we've made a lot of changes, and we've recently released the 2.0 version of the driver. And if my math is correct, then it's been 9 years since we released 1.0, and now we're releasing 2.0, so a long time in the making. We try to make it worth it. We were finally able to clean up with a lot of legacy API that was in place. The original driver was written with PHP 5.6 and PHP 7 in mind. We were now finally able to kick out all of those old PHP versions and require PHP 8.1, so we get a whole bunch of additional features, especially in terms of typing. So that's what we focused on in 2.0. The new features are also available in our last 1.x release, so 1.21 includes the same feature set. 2.0 simply removes all of the functionality that we no longer wanted to keep. This was designed to make it a bit easier for people to upgrade and to put less pressure on them to upgrade. But any new features that come out in MongoDB that will have driver support, like the upcoming bulk write, that is going exclusively to the 2.x release series. So people should start thinking about how to upgrade now.
Okay. And Jerome, you talked about you talked about the developers' productivity and developers' experience, and that has been the MongoDB's focus for a very long time now. So, can you also share your views on how the latest release has also kept up with the same idea in mind to provide a better developer productivity experience? Jerome or Andre, anyone of you can answer.
Let Jerome go first.
I need to check. please go. I mean,
so while Jerome is checking, for me, the big part is that the core experience hasn't changed. One of the things that I really like about the drivers API, not just in PHP, but in all drivers, is that there is a very rich API, a very rich programmatic interface for working with MongoDB. You don't have to have a string that just contains a whole bunch of MI keywords that your server will then have to parse, but rather we have an API where you access a collection object or a database object. You write operations, and everything is designed to be called by a program and not be written by a human like SQL is. That hasn't changed, and we're making small steps in improving this. A lot of it requires getting feedback from users as to what kind of features do they like, what are they struggling with, and that's where we're slowly focusing on and improving those parts of the driver and of our framework integrations. Jerome, anything you would like to add?
Yes, I can show just the last release we have done, if you want to share my screen. Most of the thing we do on daily basis is like this small improvement that when the driver was created, we named the function select database, which is very widely used, and in fact, it's not natural for PHP developer to have this kind of name, so we decided to just create a new method, get database, get collection, So it's a small thing, but for people that already are used to the library, it may be a bit something to change in their attitude, in their usage. But for a newcomer, it would be a bit more natural and easy to get started. Yes, so we recently done a lot of improvement to GridFS also, and the most important is the release 2.0, and I think we can talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the biggest features that we added in 1.21 and also in 2.0 is the aggregation pipeline builder. There were a couple of small things that we couldn't add in 1.21 because it would have been a BC break. So, for example, that you can pass the pipeline directly to the aggregate method and run it directly. That's not in 1.21, but all of the features from the builder itself are in there. And this is an effort that has taken, the idea itself was created like 8 years ago when we added the first aggregation pipeline builder to the doctrine MongoDB ODM. And it's taken about 1 year, 1.5 years of design work and prototypes to actually get to a point where we thought the API is nice enough and good enough to release. It's actually a ton of code. I haven't counted how many lines of code we added. Fortunately, most of it is generated, or almost all of it is generated from about 6,000 lines of YAML, which, yeah, reviewing that was a pain, but it allows us to quickly make changes to the entire structure. So Jerome is currently showing it on screen. We have basically built a domain-specific language for pipeline stages. So for example, if you open up group, we define all parts of an aggregation pipeline stage of every operator, and then we have various generators that generate PHP classes, utility functions, methods, whatnot, based on this configuration, which means that when we want to change some concept of the aggregation pipeline builder or add a new way to write aggregation pipelines, we don't have to manually do a lot of work, but we write a new generator, regenerate the entire code, and we've got it there. That's it's an extreme advantage compared to what we were doing in the doctrine MongoDB ODM, where any new aggregation pipeline operator or a new pipeline stage usually involves a couple of days of work to just write all of the code that needs to be written. And since Jerome is going into the tests, what we also did was we added all of the examples from our documentation into those files, and we generate test code. So essentially, when we look at the tests, we have examples of how you would write an aggregation pipeline expression or a stage the way it's written in the docs. You can see how to write it in PHP by looking in there. And we do have plans to eventually add this to our documentation as well, so that you can select PHP as your language in the aggregation pipeline docs and see how to use the pipeline builder in PHP for that purpose. So it's a completely different way to write aggregation pipelines. And the idea behind it is to make the features, the various operators, the stages, and everything a lot more discoverable to users, especially if they're new to MongoDB and they're only learning the capabilities of this great tool.
Okay,
Yes,
I've also
exactly.
dropped in the article that you wrote, Andre, on the aggregation builders. So people on the chat, if you want to review and if you want to see what the article is, you can go to the link and visit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one shows some of the reasons why we went with a completely different paradigm. So I can share it on my screen if you would like. I can show the old aggregation pipeline builder that we had in the doctrine ODM was a Fluent interface, and it's actually quite nice and to people using the ODM, it feels very familiar because it's exactly like the query builder that already existed. However, the problem is that it becomes difficult to read it, to see it, to modify it, but also to refactor it when you have bigger expressions. And so that's why we went with a bit of a different approach. And the blog post actually explains how you can leverage it to then go from a complex pipeline that is complex to read and complex to understand, which would take some time. I can make the screen a little bit bigger for people to see it. It then goes on to explain how you can refactor it to make it a bit easier to read, how you can extract common functionality into methods to reuse certain functionality like grouping by a user and then running certain accumulators. And it just gives you a lot more flexibility to reuse parts of your code, but also to test some of the aggregation pipeline components that you write in isolation and make sure that each individual part of your pipeline actually produces the result that you're looking for. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I've used aggregation builders recently in one of my project, and it has been easier than the earlier one. So highly recommended. Again, we see a lot of development these days using the frameworks now. So can you tell us more about the PHP frameworks with MongoDB integrates with? Rishabh, do you want to talk more on how the framework integration has been?
Yeah, so we do understand that frameworks help developers get up and running very quickly, and that's why the adoption of frameworks has been on such a high growth trend, and it keeps up showing in all the developer surveys. Frameworks usage keeps going up year over year, and that's the reason why frameworks are one of the priority items for us. We want to be present where developers are. We want to meet them where they are. We have official support for Laravel, the biggest PHP framework. We also support Symfony via the Doctrine ODM, which we maintain. And recently, there was also support for Drupal added by Drupal developers named David Becker. And there's also some ecosystem tooling, which I mentioned earlier, like Fly System, which we have an official integration with. So frameworks have been a priority for us, and they are going to be continuing to be a priority for us. So we'll continue to have resources engaging in development or making our integrations better. And while we are on this topic, I also want to take a moment to appreciate all the feedbacks and PRs that we get on our Laravel package repository and the Doctrine ODM. There has been good feedback, and also at times, pull requests, which we really appreciate coming from you people.
Great. You talked about Laravel, and we have also seen a latest release for Laravel integration now. So, Jerome, do you want to talk about those two, and how has that improvement come from the previous releases?
Yes, of course. I can show you just a bit of history. So right now we have there is a brand new page on the Laravel website about MongoDB, and this is a sign that we start really contributing with the Laravel core team and with Taylor Otwell. And that's a very good thing for both for Laravel community and for MongoDB and MongoDB users, because the integration is getting better and better, and now we are really a real player in the Laravel ecosystem. And so from this brand new page, you get access to the documentation on how to use the Laravel integration for MongoDB. And there is this note. This note, just remember that the package was previously created by Jens Seger, which is a Belgian developer who created the package about 10 years ago to integrate MongoDB with Eloquent. And at some point, he didn't have the time to continue maintenance. So that's why MongoDB took over the package with an agreement with Jens. And so we have a lot of history with this package. And the new release, the version 5 of the Laravel MongoDB package, bring something. We try to fix something that was very complex. Because in Eloquent, when you create a model, your ID field is named ID. Eloquent model Laravel. So by default, your ID field is ID. But in MongoDB, the issue is that the convention, I mean, it's in the system that the ID must be named _ID. And what we did previously was that for models, you had to override the primary key to use _ID. I don't find the example exact. But this is something, we got rid of this, and we decided that we will automatically rename ID into _ID for the database level. And this is something that is also done in Ruby on Rails and other major frameworks because of the convention, which is the ID field. And that's why in Laravel MongoDB, in version 5.0, let me find the tag. In version 5.0,
You've been too busy. You've done too many releases.
Too many releases. I mean, I'm not as fast as Laravel because they make many releases every day. But yeah, we do a lot more release on framework integration than the library. So the breaking change was that the ID is always, so the ID field is an alias of _ID. So you don't need to override the primary key to _ID. It's by default. The counterpart is that you can't have in your database the _ID field and the ID field. It won't work because it's renamed automatically. We assume that you don't use the ID name as a field name. And we know that breaks some applications because some people used to have the ID and _ID fields in their database. Maybe it was a misconception. And we want to encourage these people to just choose one of the IDs and move, and so they can clean their model. And we did the same thing for embedded documents because it was the same issues for embedded document. But in fact, for embedded documents, there is less constraint because MongoDB does not force you to use _ID as ID field. So we created in version 5.3 a new setting that make it possible to where is the setting? Setting is here. The new setting, which is rename embedded ID field, which allows to disable this behavior and help people to manage their legacy. Typically, it's for legacy applications. And we discourage people from using this setting if they don't actually have the need for legacy data. And last thing is we don't we try to improve developer experience, but sometimes we have to break some behavior in order to have a better experience for most of the developer. That's why we make these changes.
Yeah,
that's it. And also, what I can say about all these releases is, if you look at the last release, it's 5.4. Now we support a lot of Laravel features like DB show, DB table, which are new commands to do introspection of the database. And it's a lot different to do introspection of SQL database where you have a fixed schema, and MongoDB where it's flexible schema, because in SQL database you can just introspect the database, and in MongoDB you have to scan the document and detect some kind of schema. And that's something we do, and I found this command a lot more useful for MongoDB than for SQL, because SQL you can just use something like PHP, and with MongoDB you really need some application to analyze the schema for you. And yes, and we get some contribution from Master Batter, which is currently doing many contributions, and previously we had some other contributors that help and improving responding issues. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much for this detailed explanation. We'll move on to the next question here, which is for, it's the question for you, Andre. How does MongoDB integrate full text search feature with MongoDB, with PHP, sorry?
Yeah, this is one of those MongoDB features that unfortunately were only added after I stopped building applications with MongoDB. Common use case in PHP, we store our data in either a relational database or back in when we worked on PHP applications in MongoDB, and then we wanted to search it. So we either set up Elasticsearch for Scene or applied some third-party service. And I remember having to actually build the ODM integration for the Doctrine ODM to get data to a search service. And nowadays, it's just built into MongoDB Atlas. Like, I don't even have to change anything about my database. I store it. I can create a search index, and Atlas takes care of it for me. And to then find the data based on a search index, all I do is I start an aggregation pipeline with the $search stage instead of a $match stage, and I still get my same documents. And to this day, I wish this feature had existed 6-7 years ago, when I spent a lot of time trying to keep data in sync between MongoDB and Elastic, because now I don't have to. It's just taken care of for me, and my application doesn't need to know a great deal about this. So it's quite cool, and obviously it's integrated into the aggregation pipeline builder, so you have quick access to all of the different operators that you can use in search, and all of the different options to also sort your search results, to weigh them based on certain factors. It's a really good feature. I really like how it works.
Okay, and I will say the same things about vector search as well. The same seamless integration is there on MongoDB Atlas, so you don't need to rely on any other service to perform or have those recommendation systems designed. And this is where I am taking up the next question, which says, does the PHP driver support building AI capabilities with MongoDB? So the straight answer to this is yes. The MongoDB's vector search feature, which is there on Atlas, it allows you to create these indexes, have those embeddings created, and search on those embeddings after those indexes created. And having that integration with PHP is pretty seamless. Use the OpenAI, and you can build up recommendation systems and other features, like having a chatbot, for an example, using the PHP drivers. So yes, the integration is there, and it is pretty seamless and easy to use. We've talked about frameworks now, And API platform is something which is becoming very popular for creating the REST APIs. So Jerome, do you want to put in your ideas and say, do you have any plans of integrating it with MongoDB in the future?
Yes, and it's already not the future. It's already very well supported. MongoDB through Doctrine ODM is already part of API platform. So just to remember about API platform. Just if you want to share my screen, yeah. API platform is a PHP framework which work both on Symfony and Laravel, and which is a very good tool to create REST application, REST APIs. And it provides a very nice documentation, a very nice boilerplate, so you can start very quickly. And it can output a lot of formats. And the good part is that it can map directly from your model So you can directly create an API from a model from the MongoDB also. And something I want to show you is that there is this MongoDB support, which just you just have to create some class with an API resource attribute, and you get just by doing this definition of class, you can create the REST API. And a nice tip for people that already knows MongoDB is that when you want to paginate, when you want to get in the same time the number of results and a subpart of document, which is basically a pagination, we did some performance improvements recently to use a facet which is in the just looking at the pull request. So let's open this page into a class and have a look. So in MongoDB, it's using not this class. It's using a facet pipeline. So the idea is that you create a facet, a facet. And this facet contains two fields, one with a subset of results, and one which contains the count, which is a total of results from a listing of documents. And a trick is that we can also inject in the facet some fixed values, which is offset and limit, which was a trick just to pass some information from the query to the paginator that handles this data. So I can say that the support for API platform is very good for MongoDB. It's very, it has very good performance, and we still improve on it. And that's definitely something I would recommend if you need to create a REST API and you want to use MongoDB as a database.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this insight. And we've come up to an end of the questions that we already had. So what is coming up from the PHP world in the future?
Mike, I can take that one. I think the most we are working on multiple features and improvements, but one thing which is very exciting from my point of view that we are actively pursuing is adding queryable encryption to all our libraries in PHP ecosystem. And we're starting with Docker and ODM. So queryable encryption is an industry first feature that gives you ability to encrypt data fields that you have, sensitive data fields from the client side, and run expressive queries on the encrypted data. So what this means is the server has zero knowledge about the data it is storing and processing. Think of scenarios where you have sensitive patient information or sensitive banking information, SSN, things like that, that you really want to mask 100% and encrypt and save. And there is no information at all with the server, with the database, that what is actually being saved and what is actually being processed. It's completely encrypted. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, that's probably the feature I've been waiting for the longest. I've been wanting to add this to the Docker and ODM since we had the first encryption solution, so client-side field level encryption, and building it is going to be really helpful, simply because it is a cloud era. I know lots of customers that cannot use cloud vendors because they're storing sensitive data and they don't want to risk compromising their customer data. And with that feature, not only is the data encrypted in transport, it's not just encrypted when it's stored on disk, but it's encrypted before it leaves your machine. It's encrypted on the driver machine. It integrates with a key management system. So there's no way for the server to actually get to the data. And you have to opt in to actually make the data queryable, in which case, obviously, we have to store metadata to then be able to satisfy the queries. So you have to be very specific about saying, well, I want to run an equality query. I want to run a range query on it. And you cannot add that feature after the fact without rewriting the data, because the server just doesn't have enough information to satisfy the query. But your customer's data or your data is completely protected, can't be read by anyone except for you until you throw away the key. Then you can't read it either.
Interesting. Seems like an interesting feature. Do you have anything to add to the end? We have reached to the end of the live stream. I see no more questions on the chat. So do you want to end it on some closing notes, and then we'll have a great announcement to make?
So I think one other area where we're going to be working on, that we have been working on for the last few years, but in small increments, is just changing the way we return data to applications. So there's been a lot of change in PHP itself as a language, and with the introduction of native proxies, we now have the opportunity to delay a lot of the data handling until your application actually needs the data. So for example, if you're reading a relatively large document of, let's say, 1 megabyte, 2 megabytes, at the moment, we have to eagerly parse the entire BSON string that arrives and provide it to your application, whereas we can then actually defer that. I think you're sharing the wrong screen, but okay. Where we, at the moment, we can then in future defer that and only start working with BSON when you start working with it. And what it results in is, this is a small application that I've built for SymphonyCon, where I showed just some of the performance figures that MongoDB can reach. This is an application that stores about, I already forgot, I think 600 million documents, basically price records for German petrol stations. And retrieving them, it's a bit slower, I would have to investigate, but retrieving a single price for a petrol station on a given day currently runs at just 29 milliseconds, which is already fast. But we want to improve on that, and we want to make sure that if you do not actually work with this data, there should be little to no overhead in terms of memory management, in terms of the resources PHP uses on your app server, or the time that it takes to decode data. So now with PHP 8.4 and native proxies, we can eventually go into the area and just do a lot for performance in the future.
Okay, interesting. Great, great.
Cool. Yeah,
And
while since Andrews mentioned about SymphonyCon, I'll also add that we
yeah,
will be present at a number of conferences throughout the year, the API Platform Con, SymphonyCon, and the one that's coming up in July, Laracon US. So if you are attending any of those conferences, do please visit us at our booth and come say hi. We'd be happy to chat with you about your experience.
yeah, thank you. I'm very excited to see the latest features, especially the queryable encryption one, which is coming in. And thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experiences here with PHP and MongoDB. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody who has joined the live stream. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you around.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.